We're going to wake up and it's the second round of the French election. It's just happened. And Marine Le Pen has been voted the president of France. My question to you is as follows. The first phone call that you make, the first thing that you do on that result, what is it?
I think, first of all, maybe we'll send a message generally to our staff to say that we will, of course, deal with this situation. But let's not speculate, if you wish. We should keep in mind that we are 50 days from the elections. It's a long term in politics. Second, maybe for people watching us in the US, I would like to highlight that in this election we have two rounds. The first might be a vote of protest, but the second is a more rational vote with people also who have kept a strong political culture in France. And I think in the debate you will see, again, more clarification between the programs. And third, something I would like also to highlight when people talk about scenarios is that you have also the parliamentary election, which is important, not just the presidential one. In our constitution, the parliamentary election is important. And of course, the question of which majority is important. So I think the situation is more complex than sometimes it is described.
To put you on the spot just a little bit, when you say the voter is more rational in the second round, does the rational voter not vote for Marine Le Pen?
Well, again, probably some of the people at the election will represent more protest, populist votes and a little bit less rational. Let's keep in mind that people, first of all, in France remain supportive of the European construction and Eurozone, for example. And this will come into the debate with more explanation on what would be the consequences of such or such scenario. And second, again, the political culture is strong. What I mean by this, when we have TV shows, people watch the TV shows. You have millions of people watching, and the turnout in the vote is also important. So that these are perhaps differences with some other countries.
Let's talk about something you can have direct control of. It's the strategic direction of your business. Have you had any contact with Marine Le Pen or members of her team?
Banks and companies in general do not want to interfere in the political debate, and we don't do that. What we do, if you wish, is again stick to our strategic agenda, as you said. My central scenario is a reinforcement, a slow but reinforcement of the European construction. Eurozone construction in particular, as we share the same currency. And in particular also in light of the Brexit and in a world which appears to be more fragmented. There is again support for that in France overall, the majority of the people support of that, and we see there opportunities as banks.
Well, it's intriguing for many people that many large financial firms, including those in the United States, have met with members of Marine Le Pen's team. Do you not want to get a better understanding of what her plans are for the economy? We face, once again, the prospect, and it may well be small, of redenomination risk in the Eurozone. As a French bank, is it not the prudent response as a chief executive officer to sit down with members of her team to try and understand the direction of her policies?
Is it fair to say that maybe as French, we understand a little bit more what she thinks?
Of course.
And maybe people based in the US who want precisely to have a better knowledge and spend maybe less time than we do listening to the people and the campaign. So I think we have a relatively good understanding. And anyway, things will be clarified in the coming days and weeks because, again, the campaign to a certain extent has not really started. It will start when we have the final list of candidates on the 17th of March, and then the programs will be then clarified. Afterwards, between the program and what is happening, there is sometimes a difference.
Well, let's talk about how you set up your business ahead of all of this. Do you de-risk? Do you de-risk to any extent at all ahead of a series of elections in Europe, or do you just keep the boat steady and in the direction it's always been on?
Yeah, we keep the boat steady, and if you wish, again, we are a French bank, we are enshrined in the French economy, we are enshrined in the Eurozone. What is clear is we have been able to remediate and deal with all the regulatory requirements. We have liquidity buffers, capital buffers, we are fine. So we stick to the long-term agenda, which is more around dealing with our clients, innovation, and as I've said, 2017 will be a transition, but towards what? A reinforcement of the Eurozone, and with the need to think strategically about this. And we spend time precisely to say to politicians, the European Commission, think strategically about the next 10 years.
When you look strategically for the next, let's say, 5 years and the problems that a country like France and for that matter the Eurozone faces, what's the biggest issue for Societe Generale right now? A series of elections and the uncertainty around politics and the lack of reforms, one, or two, the policy at the ECB. Which is the bigger headache for you?
If you wish, Of course, currently there is uncertainty, but it does not translate so much actually in business confidence or economic climate. The economy is doing relatively well at the beginning of the year in the Eurozone and in France in particular. And so we see activity. Beyond this, as you've said, of course, a normalization of the interest rate is something important going forward, because it would mean that, of course, you will have more growth.
Yeah.
You will have also maybe the additional political steps which will help the ECB to normalize the policy. And for us, for our P&L, exiting negative rates would be a good thing, if you wish.
To be clear, people discuss maturity transformation and the shape of the curve, a steeper yield curve, if you will, in Europe. So long as the front end is negative, is that all that matters to you guys? That's going to remain a headache?
There are really two things. Whether, again, the curve is steep or not,
yeah.
Because, as you said, in particular, when we hold a lot of treasuries and things like this, it's better to have a higher interest rate. And then, of course, if you put your money at the central bank and you have to pay, that's difficult, because we don't pass that to the clients. For an individual client, it would be very difficult to say, you put your money at the bank, you have to pay for that money to be in the bank. So normalizing also and going back to zero would be positive for us.
So I'm going to get in trouble, and you and I are going to have a 10 euro wager, and the 10 euro wager is as follows. Your term ends 2019 in May of that year, I believe. President Draghi's term is the back end of that year, October, November time. By the time you've left, has the ECB raised rates?
I'm not there to speculate on this, but I think there is more chance that they can do this. Why? Because we've seen also a change of environment in the US. The inflation is picking up. There is a question whether it's core or not inflation, but we see some sign of a better inflation. And again, growth is a little bit better. I think the ECB has a clear understanding of the negative consequences of negative interest rates also on the financial sector, and can see that effectively credit is doing better. One of the rationale was to have an incentive for banks to lend and not keep the money in the central bank. We see better credit development. So I think there is more chance that there is no normalization. So I'm happy to take your bet.
I'll take the bet.
I'm happy to take your bet.
And let's cross our fingers it's not in francs and it's actually in euros, Mr. Oudea. So the other question I've got for you is Mediobanca coming out with a report lately and saying that European financials deserve a lower valuation against their US peers because of the complexities of both politics, the situation in the economies as well. Things are still relatively weak. Do you believe that there should be a cheaper valuation applied to, say, your bank compared to a similar US institution?
I think it's a too short view. It's fair to say the US in the short term will benefit from maybe a slightly more dynamic economy, better interest rate environment. In Europe, when I say Europe, in particular in the Eurozone, we have more work ahead. We have more work to build a financial service which is more balanced between capital markets and banks. We have more years maybe to wait for a full normalization of the monetary policy. But going forward, there's also a formidable opportunity for European players to take advantage of precisely this construction, which will be more completed than what we say today. So I remain optimistic, and I see step by step more and more positive steps in the European banking sector.
The US banking sector, the prospect of deregulation, it's a big question. It's existed for a long time, and I'll ask it of you. Can a European investment bank really compete on scale on Wall Street?
We have decided to have a dynamic but focused strategy here in the US to deal with businesses which are consistent with our global strategy. I mean, with our core expertise in certain sectors like energy or capital markets on the credit side, because we want to be able to refinance either in euro or in US dollars. So we try to find the right consistent businesses. We don't want to compete head-on with other businesses, such as, for example, US cash equity, etc. So, I mean, if you are selective, which means not necessarily be that big, I think you can compete and be profitable as part of a consistent business. We need to be selective.
The administration here in the United States looking at a softer touch, perhaps, with regulation. No firm policies out yet, but that seems to be the direction of travel. You think that's a bad idea?
May I say, I've tried to understand exactly what could be the direction. What I understand is maybe more a little bit of kind of refinements or improvement of certain decisions which have been made sometimes perhaps in a short time frame and might be imperfect. If it is this and you carry on with the main decision which have been to build a safer system, I think it's not a big deal.
The regulation, though, and the burden for the United States banks may well be less than, say, the burden for their European peers. The level playing field, so to speak, that has existed maybe for a while might not be there? What does that mean for SocGen?
First of all, let me say the burden we have also on our shoulders is very significant, and we have still, to a certain extent, to digest some regulations. Overall, I think it's important to try to keep a relatively strong harmonization between regulation in the different regions. You might have differences because you have also different way of financing the economy. You have more capital markets here, so the same regulation means less for US banks than for European banks, where we finance the bulk of the economy. We need to take also that reality. Overall, I think it's important to keep the global framework which has been decided. I'm happy with that. We have adapted, we have complying with all the rules, and now we should focus more on transforming the businesses. We need to innovate, as you know, with new technology, find a way to even add more added value to the clients. That should be the core of our focus and energy.
The final question to you right now, what's keeping you awake at night at the moment, more than anything?
You know, I have one rule as a CEO, which is to sleep reasonably well. Always 5 to 6 hours at the minimum, and very well. That's why I still have so much energy after many years as CEO of a bank.